Hey everybody, and welcome back to another installment of the Rumcast. You are listening to the podcast that talks all things rum related with the people who love and shape it. My name is John Gulla, coming to you from South Florida, and co-hosting the program with me, as always, is my rum brother from another mother, Will Hookinga. And oh boy, Will, do we have an interesting interview episode lined up for us today.
Did you say "oh boy" just now? I think that's the first time I've heard that expression actually used by someone in conversation.
I was going to go with golly gee, but I just went with oh boy instead.
We have an oh boy worthy episode lined up today. We talked to a rum company that I think has a lot of people have had questions about lately. So we talked to Maggie Campbell and Darin Vest from the newly launched American Cane, or still not quite totally launched because their products aren't out yet, but announced to the public company American Cane. So Maggie is the CEO, Darin is the co-founder, and there's a lot of backstory to get in there. But I think if you're someone who's listened to this podcast, you've seen Maggie be on the show several times now over the years in a variety of roles. And I think everyone was very interested to know what her next move is. So we're going to get into all that as we get into the episode. But before we do that, John, what's been going on with you? What's new?
I did get to attend Miami Rum Congress after we got back from our trip, and that was nice. Got to say hi to some old friends and some old interviews we've done. I should say old interviews. Old people. No, not old people.
Past guests, maybe might be a way to, yeah.
Yes, that's what I was looking for.
Let's just get the word old out of there.
I haven't even been drinking yet today, Will. But yes, past guests we got to say hi to, or I got to say hi to a few. And really, it was a nice show to see what's going on in the rum world right now and see maybe some things up and coming. So maybe we'll have some future content from some people there that we met. Now, there's another thing I wanted to talk about, Will, before we jump into our main part of our episode today. And okay. I have to say, before I start with this, that, you and I, we kick these ideas around with each other a bit. And I think of you as our resident skeptic, in a way.
Okay,
that's
I'll wear that badge.
Thing. Yeah. And when I'm coming up with ideas, sometimes maybe I can fling it a little far afield and you have to rein me back in a little bit. So it's a good dynamic. But one idea that I had came actually from our recent trip when we were trying rums at Maine Rum Congress in Liverpool.
Wait. You're doing the thing. I was just texting you about this. So you just said you were at Miami Rum Congress, and we went to Maine Rum Company. You texted me earlier, and you made a reference to talking to someone at MRC, and my brain immediately went Maine Rum Company because I was not at Miami Rum Congress this week, and I was mentioning to you how they have the same initials. And so I think that caused you to combine them just now. So sorry for the digression.
Maine Rum Company.
There you go.
Thank you very much. I do think in initials sometimes. So that's, I see what you mean by that. But Maine Rum Company, when we were there in Liverpool, and if you listen to the episode, you heard a little bit of that when we were trying some of the rums there in the warehouse. It was freaking cold, right?
Yeah.
And we were dressed, well, but like the rums themselves that are in these barrels, it was a little bit cold. And
they're kind of refrigerated.
That affected the way we experienced a few of them at the start, we thought. And so from that stemmed this idea that I was like, well, how much difference does temperature really make with the rum? And so we know we typically drink neat, right? Some people do on the rocks or use some ice with it, so they already chill it. But that also dilutes it. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just temperature, really. How much difference would there be in the same rum being room temperature neat, being a little under room temperature, or maybe, let's say, chilled, right?
Yeah.
And then also, I know this doesn't happen often with people that I know of, at least, but warmed. So if it's above a certain temperature and warm, now, I'm not talking coffee here or anything, but warm.
That bottle that you keep in the garage during the summer.
Right. Or at any point here in Miami.
That's true.
Really.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to see, is there something there with that in changing the notes or the flavors that you get out of a rum? I think it feels to me like it's well talked about that when you have a chilled spirit or rum, that it's going to mute some of the flavors is what people tend to think. But I don't know to what degree that would be.
I feel like sometimes on Reddit and stuff like that, you'll see someone post a picture of, enjoying a rum, and you can see a bottle in the background, and you can tell that it's been in the freezer because it's kind of frosty,
Yeah, yeah.
And there'll always be someone in the comments who's like, oh, by the way, if you keep your spirits in the freezer, it's going to kind of mute some of the flavors at that temperature.
Right.
And that always kind of made logical sense to me, but it's not something that I've necessarily really tested critically before.
Yeah.
I've thrown an odd bottle in the freezer every once in a while in my day, especially when I was younger, but it's not something that I do that much these days. So I'm not in the habit of drinking rum that is at a lower temperature that has not been chilled with ice, basically, like you were saying, which then dilution comes into the picture. So yeah, I definitely, it makes logical sense, but I haven't actually sat down and really like compared it A to B. So I think that could be interesting to do.
Yeah, so I want to do that in a future episode. I'd like to take a rum. I'd like to, for us independently, to do different temperatures, and we'll do this very scientifically. Very scientifically. We'll get the exact temperature. No, I'm joking.
We have
will
the highest
be chilled.
scientific standards on this show.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
Of course, rigorous. But I wanted to give an opportunity for others to join into this experiment. So the question I have for you, and maybe really for listeners out there, is what kind of ubiquitous rums should we test this out with? And so I'd be looking for a bottle that you can get in most places that is a well respected rum that people, enjoy and like already, and that isn't too expensive, right? Because I would want something that we're experimenting with in a way. So mid-level price or something like that, so that people could do this with us and
Yeah.
see if they feel any differently than we do with it. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that immediately, but I did think I would love to try at least an agricole, maybe an unaged agricole with this.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe something like a Barbados or Jamaica rum, even a high ester rum could be interesting just to see what that does. And then maybe something like a column still. So those were just some thoughts that came out, and I would love to hear from people on that.
Yeah, the first place that my mind went was, okay, what's like a widely available, just standard rum that we could try that's highly familiar and also something that's highly consistent, right? Because you want that
Yes.
consistency if a lot of different
good
people
point.
in different markets and stuff are going to be doing it. And the first rum that came to mind for me was Appleton 8. I think you could do like a wide range of Appleton offerings, but that one's kind of right in the middle. It's got some complexity, but it's not super complex. It's also, it's not bottom shelf cheap, but it's also not super expensive. So that was kind of the first place. But I would also, I think it would be interesting to see how this exercise differs between something that's more standard strength. Is Appleton 8? I can't remember if it's 43 or 40. But it's down there. It would be interesting to do it with a rum like that, and also a rum that is high strength or cask strength, and just see if you have greater intensity of flavor, how much does the temperature change impact that versus something else. So that would be pretty interesting.
Okay. Well, shoot us some DM or an email. We'll give you all of that stuff at the end of the episode like normal. And let us know what your thoughts are on what we should go with to do this experiment. What would be interesting, right? Because that's what we're really trying to see is what degree and what would be most interesting to do this with so that people could join in. Awesome. All right. Well, I know you usually tell us a little bit ahead of time about some of the things that we expect when we do an interview. People know Maggie Campbell, obviously, right? The illustrious Maggie Campbell. She's been on our show a number of times now.
Yeah.
And this is a new role for her. People, I think, will be interested to hear from Darin Vest as well in terms of how he's viewed things and what he's doing. And, maybe get a little bit more from what's to come and what we expect from them.
Yeah, I definitely like I said earlier, Maggie's been no stranger to the show. If you're a newer listener and you're less familiar, she started out in the rum world. It really is the person who kind of put Privateer on the map as like a really serious, quality American rum distillery. She was the head distiller and president there. And then a few years ago, she went to Mount Gay to serve as their estate rum manager. So that's kind of like the side of the distillery that's putting out rums, using their own estate grown cane that they're processing there to make their own molasses with, that sort of thing. So she was very involved with that team there. So a really interesting, varied, wide ranging background in rum. And she's done stuff with other spirits as well. And I think one of the first questions people had when this announcement came out, which this was, I guess, back in October, she shared an announcement that a company called American Cane had appointed her as CEO. And I'll just quickly read, what the announcement read, so we're all on kind of the same page. So it said, American Cane, a rum company committed to celebrating and producing iconic American rum, is thrilled to announce the appointment of Maggie Campbell as its chief executive officer. With a deep passion for the art of spirits and 18 years of experience in the beverage industry, Maggie is poised to lead American Cane in its mission to revitalize and redefine American rum. So, John, I'm curious, what was your reaction when you saw that news? Because I think like almost everybody, basically, you had no idea this was her next move. I mean, you knew at that point that she had left Mount Gay, but didn't know kind of what she was going to do next. So how did that news hit you?
Yeah, a few thoughts. Number one is, well, wait, what is American Cane exactly?
Yeah.
Right? Because that was unfamiliar. And number two was, okay, makes sense that Maggie would come back to an American institution to make rum, right? And then also the third thing would be, whoa, CEO. So this isn't just distiller or something like that, but CEO. So those were all the thoughts I had initially and why I was really excited to hear from her. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it was like, I guess, kind of bittersweet in a way when she went from Privateer to Mount Gay, because on the one hand it was like, oh man, the American rum space is like really losing someone who's amazing.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's like, what kind of validation in a sense for the category of American rum that someone who's been part of like leading its revival is now going to work at Mount Gay, like one of the most well-respected, oldest,
historic,
it's kind of I guess kind of like one of the founding houses of rum, kind of as a category in people's minds. So that was cool. But yeah, with her coming back, it's like, okay, this is pretty exciting that the American rum space is gaining this level of experience and knowledge and everything. So I had kind of a unique window into all this, I guess, because so about almost 3 years ago, I got an email from a guy who listened to the show and who followed the American Rum Report newsletter that I was doing at the time, named Darin, who happened to be the Darin who is now co-founder of American Cane. And it was a very nice email. He was a listener, kind of followed the newsletter, and was saying, I have this idea for a distillery that I think is really cool. Would it be okay if we could talk about it sometime? And so I said sure. And we talked on the phone a few times. He was very passionate. Had kind of just started getting into rum over the past few years, but had really dived deep into it. I was really impressed with like how much he'd already experienced and kind of the lengths he was going to familiarize himself with the category. And he had this idea to start a distillery, it was going to work with fresh cane and do all this amazing stuff. And so, we kept in touch. I tried to help him out, as much as I could. And at some point in all this, I introduced him to Maggie, and with no thoughts of like, oh, you should try to hire Maggie or something like that. It was more like, at some point you're going to need to find talented people to help you, create this distillery. Maggie knows everybody, so she'll be able to introduce you to some really good people. So that was kind of the thought behind linking them together. And so, they talked, and I mean, this was like well over a year ago, and kind of kept in touch over the years. And so, several, maybe, I don't know how many months ago, but at some point it became a thing where it was like, oh yeah, we're actually gonna offer Maggie to come like join us at American Cane. And it became this thing that was like real. And I was like, it was amazing to see this thing that just started from an idea, from someone who didn't have a background in the spirits industry, to now being able to like put a vision out there that was so strong that it attracted someone of Maggie's caliber to come be a part of it. that was really amazing to see. And I had just been like having to sit on my hands not to say anything about this for like a few months now, because they wanted to announce the project at the right time and everything. So I've been able to see a lot of like the evolutions of what American Cane is like trying to be, wants to be over the years, because as we've talked a lot on the show about before, most of the time when you're starting a new distillery, it's not like a linear journey that just has this like natural progression from idea to like, okay, now we've got a building, now we're open, now we're selling rum, like all this stuff. There's all these twists and turns along the way, and adjustments, pivots you have to make in order to balance kind of the pie in the sky vision with like the economic realities of how difficult it is to do something like this. So that's a big part of what we talk about in the interview. And I'm trying not to say too much about what kind of stuff they're working on, because I want people to just listen to the interview and hear it there. But I think it's exciting to me for people to get to hear about it now after all this time.
Yeah. And the only last thing I'll say is how much patience, right? You mentioned you had to sit on this for a while, and I'm sure that they have a lot of things that they're really excited to get into, but that it takes a lot of time, planning, and patience to pull something like this off. And that where they are now, and they're going to talk a lot about that and share a lot with us, that all of us rum enthusiasts out there, we're going to be super interested, but we've got to have patience,
Yeah. And I will say, in the interest of transparency, like I am technically on their, it sounds like so official to say this, but like I'm on their advisory board, which means that they have compensated me. But I only say that because like we wouldn't be having them on without there already being a good deal of public interest in what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So this is very much like, as soon as that announcement went up, I think we had like one of our Patreon happy hours that week or something, and like everyone was just like asking all these questions about what American Cane is and everything. So I didn't want to make this something where it's like just trying to shoehorn it into the show. I wanted kind of natural interest to drive it. So anyway, just in the interest of full disclosure, wanted to get to that. But I'm just super excited for this to get out there. And honestly, I didn't really know totally what the product timeline would be, and hearing from them that it's going to be sooner than I think you and I guessed it would be was pretty exciting. So really looking forward to getting this out there and people hearing it.
I remain uncompensated and totally neutral.
All right, we are here with Darin Vest and Maggie Campbell of American Cane. Darin is the founder, Maggie is the CEO, and now 4-time, I think, Rumcast guest. It's either 4 or 5 times. Either way, it's the new ongoing record. And Darin, I was thinking about what a long road it's been to this interview happening. And I was interested in going back and revisiting our first communication that kind of kicked this off. And so I found the first email that you ever sent me, which was May 30th, 2022. So nearly 3 years ago. And you told me you were going to launch a rum brand and asked if we could talk about it sometime. But at the beginning of the email, you said, I just learned that we are both Brown graduates, and you mentioned your son, Chaz, who's now part of leading the company as well, but he had just graduated from Brown at the time. And so in my response, I was like happy to speak with you. Sounds really interesting. Unfortunately, I'm not actually a Brown graduate, nor did I attend Brown. And I've always wanted to ask you, if you had known that before you sent me the email, would you still have wanted to talk to me?
I wouldn't have expected as much, I guess.
So keep the expectations low, basically.
No.
What a great way to get attention, though, right, Darin? Like, hey, how do you ignore that? Yeah.
I make that up all the time. Yeah. I don't know where I got that from. But
I mean, I did. I graduated from Belmont, so it starts with a B. Yeah, I don't know if that was it.
Mm.
Well, listen, it was a fortuitous email. And I'm glad I sent it. Because and I'll just say this is actually a super exciting moment for me and my rum journey and in the rum journey of that idea that I expressed to you, in that initial email 3 years ago. It's been a amazing ride of getting educated about the rum industry, and understanding eventually where I thought there were some real opportunities for this business. And I wanted to basically thank you guys because the work that you guys are doing is really impactful in the space, right? Like we honestly wouldn't be here on this call, and American Cane wouldn't be in the place that it's in, and actually Maggie probably wouldn't be our CEO without the Rumcast and that connectivity that we had that day. Will so.
Uh, well,
Um,
thank you.
Really, no, honestly, I mean, appreciate it. And it's super exciting for me to finally be talking on the Rumcast about what we're.
Yeah, well, I think there's kind of like there's many pieces of this journey, but kind of like the two high level ones I think we want to talk about at the beginning. I think people naturally want to hear, the backstory behind the company and where it's going, but also people are, this is Maggie's fourth time on the show. People are very familiar with Maggie. People have always been excited about the great things she's done in rum, and so I think a lot of people are wondering, like, how did Maggie come into the picture and everything. So we want to tackle that as well. But I think the best place to start is like, Darin, how did this all come about, basically? Yeah.
So rum is difficult, right?
Yes.
It's got this history, and it first came about because I just kind of went down a rabbit hole of understanding a little bit more deeply that history about 3 years ago. And it's tied to a time when sugar production in the Caribbean and slavery really drove the world economy. And every sugar plantation had a rum distillery, and black folks made the rum, and that was an epiphany to me. And um, and the rum that was made really ruled the world. For 200 years, if you were drinking a spirit, it was rum, maybe a little cognac. And rum, we started producing rum commercially in the Caribbean and in this country 150 years before whiskey and bourbon. And so, like, there was this uh, coreness to rum in the global economy, in American culture. Um, and I wanted to talk about that history, and I think and revive that in a way that was positive, and that I thought the industry, as I come to get educated more and more over the last couple of years, the industry struggles with that history. I think
Mm.
brands struggle a bit about how to embrace that history in a positive way. And so we end up with glorified stories, about the sea and pirates, but and but there's a value that's lost inherently when we don't know how to embrace the aspects of that history that I think are important to American culture. And so we really just wanted to take a different path.
Mm.
And that path was, let's celebrate the actual history of rum, the people that contributed to that history, both black, brown, white, and the American culture that basically rum was a part of and supported and thrived, right? Like, rum was served at the Washington's inauguration.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
The tax on sugar, which impacted molasses and rum, was really the like igniter of the revolution, even more than the tax on tea, right? And
And
Americans drank
stamps. Yeah.
and stamps,
Yeah.
and Americans drank 3.7 gallons of rum on average per person,
Mm-hmm.
which is starting to get close to one rum drink a day per person. to talk about like how ubiquitous rum was in our culture. Massachusetts and Rhode Island alone had 100 rum distilleries,
Mm.
right? And
And you're
today,
from Rhode Island, right?
Rhode Island, which was
Yeah.
like one of those key points of like when I then went down the road of thinking I wanted to do this and become a maker again of rum. We initially thought we'd do it in Rhode Island, in part because of that history. But even today, we in the U.S. and mostly in the continental U.S. consume 25% of the world's rum, and in the continental U.S. we produce less than 1% of it. So there's
Mm.
this huge like
Yeah.
production consumption void that we really think is this amazing opportunity in rum. And so we've lost connectivity to the history and to how rum was our core spirit tied to our celebrations and our way of life in America. And so we've built American Cane to celebrate and to champion American rum. And we're doing it at a time when, rum is really trending globally right now. And challenging our cousins in Kentucky and Tennessee, and really growing at the high end particularly. And our goal with American Cane is let's make amazing rums and let's also bring great value to the consumer, and build America's iconic rum house. Similar to the iconic rum houses in other parts of the world in the Caribbean, um, and produce America's finest rums. And doing that as a Black-owned company, we think is just really impactful, and positive for the industry.
Mm.
Yeah.
Um, like you guys, I have a pretty demanding day job. And so I knew the whole time that this was really going to be about, creating the vision and then pulling together the team that would
Mm.
drive this, right? And so we've been super fortunate that I was able to somehow convince my son Chaz to join us full time, and come on board as a co-founder. But really, we've been fortunate to that Maggie believed in this vision and that she's come on board to lead this.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I was really excited to talk with you both about this was because, so you mentioned, I know there's not a whole lot of information out there yet. And what I can piece together at this point is, hey, you want to make rum, you want to make American rum, and you have a really good team to do it with. And that's all I know so far.
Yeah,
So,
I haven't filled John in on anything. We were actually just chatting right before y'all hopped on the call, and I was
yeah.
like, normally John and I try to get on the same wavelength before we interview someone, so we consume some of the same sources. We text back and forth a little bit about it, and I was like, I've kind of intentionally not told you anything because I want you to go into the interview like on the same page as all the rum enthusiasts out there, who have just kind of seen the announcements but don't know all the
Right.
details. So yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think this is a great place to start. And Darin, you giving us, kind of the backstory and the history also is great. But now I want to know, like, okay, other than you've got Maggie, you've got Chaz, and yourself, and you've got a good team, you want to make American rum. Where is all of this right now? Where are you in the process of this vision coming together? What is going on, and what can you fill us in on?
So I was connected to Darin through Will, which is kind of amazing. I feel so lucky that you guys are so sweet to talk about how I sometimes connect people like Craig and Zan, et cetera. And like
Oh yeah.
for me, like one of the greatest joys in my career is like if I can actually help someone or if I can actually link people up. So it really means a lot to me that Will was actually my introduction to Darin, and it was a couple years ago. And honestly, like this is what I admire. Darin understands it's a long-term business, and it takes time. And so a couple years ago, we chatted. And, when someone's new to the industry, I'll usually give some time. And especially for Darin and what he's working on, I think it's too important. It's so original and like so critical to our industry that I thought this was great. So we chatted and I said, I really love these concepts. These are really strong. Feasibility, logistically, legally, these are going to be some challenges. There you go. And then we caught up again down the road. And he said, okay, I heard what you said, and I've made these changes, and I'm growing this. And it kept moving. And he took feedback. I can't tell you how many people have paid me good money and not taken my feedback,
Yeah.
And then we
When
talk
Maggie
again
speaks,
further down.
when
Sorry?
Maggie, when Maggie speaks, you listen.
And then we'd move further down the road and we'd talk again. And he said, "Oh, I thought about what you said here. And look, we're doing this. And we had these ideas." And it just kept getting better and more real. So by the time he officially approached me, it was like I knew him, I knew his style, I knew it was a good fit. I'm really excited about, a lot of the core foundation stones that are building this business and that will help us to make amazing decisions to make great rums and highlight, you know, uh, give recognition and awareness to this full, rich story of creation of rum and intelligence and technology and know-how in rum. And also celebrate that, these same diverse groups today are the ones drinking rum, and that it is this heritage connection drink. And so I think it's exciting for folks to actually kind of hear about us at this stage. I'm sure it'll be a little frustrating because I don't think people understand what a long-term project building a spirits brand is. It's a very long term. I know while I was at Mount Gay, I was very secretive about what I was working on. And still to this day, nothing I've worked on has ever been released because it just takes time. And I think people, I'd be there 6 months and they'd be like, "Oh, Maggie must have worked on this." I'm like, "No, guys, it's been 6 months." Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not how spirits work. It takes a really long time to bring something to life. And I appreciate all the work Darin and Chaz have done to set it up to be successful. And now people get to really see us at the start. So I'm sure they want, a beautiful website to taste products, but, you know, it's going to be a living the timeline with us. So,
We're getting there, right? So
yeah.
I think the short answer is that we'll have products in the market in the next 6 months.
Wow. Oh, okay.
Yep.
That's a huge surprise for me. I was thinking, and Maggie was kind of painting the picture of like, hey, this is real long term. I was
Well,
thinking years.
well,
Okay.
the long-term aspect of this, like, so just realistically, if you're trying to launch today, and particularly in the current spirits market, right, you're trying to launch today, a distillery, you're raising tens of millions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
And you're doing it, in a way that is takes risk, right? Most of these things don't work. So like we have this unique market opportunity. I think it's one of the biggest opportunities in rum to kind of champion American rum and build America's iconic rum house. And you've got to take responsibility with that to kind of have a go-to-market strategy that's conservative, that mitigates risk, right? That's smart, that uses capital well. And so that's the long-term, I think, perspective that Maggie's talking about is how do we analyze the marketplace of American rum? How do we look at what people are doing today, what needs to change, and how do we expand the reach of rum? How do we, get a new generation of consumers to start to drink rum? How do we convert brown spirits drinkers that are drinking other spirits to rum? Like that's the whole bigger picture that we're tackling with what we're building, and that's a long-term journey
Yeah.
um, that's going to take us, 10 years, right? But the way that pretty much anybody who wants to go into the spirits business starts, is that you source a product initially, right?
Okay.
And that's
Yeah.
that's what Uncle Nearest did. That's what 10 to 1 does. Like
Gotcha.
everybody, and you want to have aged spirit when you come to market, right? And so so we're phasing this. Our first phase is going to be actually a couple of different brands that we're launching, two different brands. One's American Cane and one's a more accessibly priced brand.
Okay.
Um, and they'll be sourced initially, and then we'll move into a distilling phase when that time is right.
I
And
think where our gifts show in this too is that we get to work with some really amazing partners and we're very familiar with what's available. I think sometimes when brands are new to the space, they think they're reinventing rum, but they
Mm.
don't know what's already there
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. So we're very familiar with the space. We're very familiar with what could be really cool, what could be exciting, what could be just really tasty and welcoming people into our world and getting to know them and, being a strong staple for all the people who are reading about rum and say, "Well, what rum do I go buy then?" and all the people who have these amazing expressions that they're holding on to, but they want something they can just like love and enjoy while their specialty bottles are being savored really slowly. So yeah, having something accessible that's still delicious and serves a purpose and has a reason to exist and that people are excited about. That's kind of like a welcome into what we're doing. And that will just be like a classic. We hope to be like a, on America's table as a go-to rum, while then also, which I really believe in. It's not just a convenience of business. It's something I'm really excited about. And then, growing into that longer term second phase, third phase of business with a long roadmap that's a sustainable way to grow. Cracking open a brand new distillery day one, I've seen how it's gone for a lot of folks. It's really hard. I think that, it's definitely hard to start now and not have like, everything all done and ready, but I think it'll be fun and cool, and we'll have different introductions to who we are and grow who we are and grow our rum house as we go.
Wow, I have so many questions from all of that. Okay, well, let me see if we can start to work out, because certainly want to hear more about phase 2 and phase 3, if I can loosely use that in terms of what you're talking about there. But so let's start with a couple of things. One is you're sourcing some rum, and that's going to be available in the next 6 months, is what I'm hearing. Can you talk more about those brands? What are you planning to do with that? What are you releasing? Is it American cane and this is American made rum that you're releasing, or is it sourced from other areas? I'm so curious.
This is what I was hoping for, John. This is why I held so much back from you.
So the first products we're bringing are just going to be delicious rum. It's going to be amazing rum from, the global perspective of rum.
Okay.
As a traditional, there's a whole tradition in America of rum blenders and bottlers, et cetera. So we're going to be kind of honoring that tradition while bringing, this global story of rum together, especially from our friends in the Caribbean, into the States, and working with some great folks to bring this together. And that will be by American cane, but you won't see like American cane plastered across that label, because we don't want to be disingenuous.
Gotcha.
And try to say, with provenance and using names, it can be tricky. Yes, this is, continental North America is the largest rum market in the world. And we produce less than 1%, as Darin's always saying. And so for us, it is, by us, for us. We don't have this long history. We'll never be the most historic rum house. We'll never have, the most traditional iconography, all this stuff. But that gives us freedom to be really fresh and really new and invite all these new drinkers in, and feel like, we don't have this long legacy of drinkers we could risk losing by doing something bold. We're starting fresh and hoping to bring new people in. So I'm kind of excited about it. This is something like for years I'd kind of been like a little daydreams about, something accessible for everyone. It's a big, warm welcome, a big warm hug into the rum world. And when your friend calls you from the liquor store and they're like, "Oh, I've heard rum's cool now. What should I buy?" What a hard call is that to get, right? You're like, "Oh my God, well, what drinks do you make? Do you like citrus?
Yeah.
Do you like stirred? Do you like this? Da da da." And instead you could be like, "You know what? This one's rock solid. Does a variety of things. It's tasty. It's made by people with experience who can, pick out hopefully a great blend and put together something special." And it can become like that go-to. I was talking to one of my rum friends and they said, "When I go to the whiskey aisle, it takes me 2 minutes to pick out my whiskey. I go to the gin aisle, it takes me 2 minutes to pick out my gin." I love meandering the rum aisle and finding cool things and trying new stuff. But, also when I'm going over to my aunt's house for Thanksgiving dinner or somewhere for a pool party, I just kind of want something, chill. And I think there's lots of great rums out there. Don't get me wrong. I love the world of rum.
Yeah.
But I think this will be sort of, we're not trying to sell an experience of somewhere else. We're really saying, rum came to this country through the knowledge and skill and expertise of really diverse people. Here I am in the middle of cane country, just a few hundred miles from the Mexican border. There's big indigenous communities here. There's obviously huge, huge, unmeasurable contribution from Black and brown folks to rum, cane farming, agriculture, distillation throughout this whole region. And today as drinkers, like we are still like this amazing country full of a lot of diverse people, and like this is our heritage drink, and we as a large group of, people should really, really enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's not always about being like transported somewhere else, which is always a joy. It's a treat, but also it could be about the here and now. And this is America's heritage drink. So kind of excited about this kind of phase one. And then phase two, we intend to work with a lot of really great partners here in the current American rum community to bring you something that is American cane. It is American rum, and it sort of starts to walk us down that path. So initially talking about rum as this global heritage spirit and welcoming people in, and then getting deeper in the story of American rum as we unroll our roadmap and walk ourselves down this adventure.
Yeah. I love the idea of talking about American rum heritage in more than one way, right? We're talking about rum that can be made in America, but also rum history in America from other destinations and other places, and that kind of makes sense to me for sure. Before I kind of move on, I have to press a little bit.
Yeah,
6 months is not a long time. Go ahead, Darin. Yeah.
I will just add to that, there's this opportunity, I think, in the rum space that we want to go after, which is if you go down the rum aisle, there's not a lot of modern kind of messaging, fresh packaging. Like there's lots of things that you can learn from the consumer packaged goods space of like all this creativity and innovation that's happening today. And I think there's an ability to bring that into rum still and have that be, move the needle and to
Sure.
be
Yeah.
innovative, right? So it's like doing all the stuff that Maggie just said with that initial brand, and then also kind of, having our messaging game, our packaging game, like all that stuff elevated above what you're really getting in rum today.
John and I are going through the packaging stuff
Yep.
right now. Just hired, found a great label designer to work with, and still looking at bottles. So yeah, it's those are interesting conversations for sure.
I think
Yeah.
it's hard to get, consumers that aren't drinking great rum or aren't drinking rum or drinking some other spirit truly engage and get an emotional connection with them to want to adopt rum without making those moves right around the messaging and the packaging and kind
Yeah,
of
I
meeting
mean,
meeting folks where they are today with that stuff.
I think as much as we try to focus on the liquid, because that's what matters to the listeners of this podcast the most. I think when you have aspirations to want to get new people excited about rum who aren't familiar with it, and you want to educate them and bring them in and show them what good rum is, I want to say I guess it's unfortunately like the packaging matters for that. So it's really important. And I'm glad you're thinking about it.
Yeah. And
Yeah, coming from the wine
Sorry.
world, it's like, you're just really looking at, there's incredible, beautiful traditional labels and they're great. And
Mhm.
sometimes the modern labels, like if you're selling the outside, what's inside. But hopefully people know our experience. They know the juice inside is going to be good.
Yeah.
And I love a lot of the traditional brands. They're amazing. But our job is not to try to imitate them. We're not them. It's to be different, and I always joke with my husband. He'll show me a cool label he likes, and I say, "No brown, no gold, no silver. These are my these are my rules."
We have
But
to
yeah,
keep
you
that
look
in
at
mind,
the
John.
Oh,
you
yeah.
look at the
I
natural
think we already
wine
broke that
aisle,
rule.
and those are great classic rum signifiers, and that's fantastic. We're just doing something different.
Yes.
It's not about what's
Uniquely.
right for everyone, right? This is
Unique.
always what I say to people in the industry.
Yeah.
There's not one right way to do it, right?
Yeah.
But what we're going for, the guidelines, the things that are leading us on this first iteration is
Yeah.
this, which will be different than the second or the third. Like those will have different feels, different vibes, different choices, because it's all about the intention, right? Like how do you want to meet someone, and those choices.
Agreed. It's even harder when you're doing it with more than one person who that other person has a different perspective on what it might look like than you might.
I feel it. I feel it. It's hard. It's really hard. It's, the
Yeah.
first taste is the look of the bottle, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we
Um,
got with the lips, right?
Yes. So before we move on, I have lots of interesting and good questions I think people want to hear about, but I just want to make sure 6 months from now, we're going to have some bottles from you. Are you able to say anything about what those are or give us any information on that yet?
I think we're playing a little chill still,
Okay.
but
All right. Okay. I had
delicious,
to ask.
tasty, open arms, accessible, chill, gather with the people you love kind of rum.
Okay.
So
All
like
right.
we could say it's probably not going to be 15-year cask strength.
Doing that beautifully. It
Yeah,
will be
yeah,
different. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And
Got it.
and I wanted to give you a direct answer to that question. I gave you what really is our target for launching these first products. But I mean, you guys are getting a sense, a limited one of kind of what it's like to try to pull together a product pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of work that's obviously being done right now to meet that time frame. And a lot of decisions being made and right now. So like all that stuff is in progress, right? So we can hit that timing. So that's why Maggie's not giving you all the transparency at this point. But the good news is you won't have to wait too long.
Okay, sounds good. I want to move on to. I think when people heard the announcement of Maggie joining American Cane, a lot of us out there thought, well, that makes sense because Maggie, you're such a an icon in American rum distilling for years, and then to come back here to America to make rum at some point is logical to me. But I wanted to stipulate that the job isn't distiller or head distiller; it's CEO. So, what exactly does that job entail for you, and how different is it from your previous positions?
Darren, do you want to talk a little bit? Because you were the one who approached me and said, I want you as CEO. So why did
I'll,
you, what was that about?
I'll just tell you this. Um, I mean, if you think Maggie's just a distiller, then you don't know Maggie, right? Like Maggie is a force of nature and has this amazing business acumen. Um, and and there's just down to earth kind of quality that connects authentically with people, whether it's investors or board members or consumers, right? And the depth of her experience in spirits and wine, and I think she's one of the best palates in the business and noses, and uh, she's already managed, several substantial businesses in her prior roles, right? And so I think I think the challenge with Maggie is that people haven't given her the right platform, to be honest. Um, I mean, and we weren't going to make that mistake. Like, we want Maggie at the helm of this creatively, from a business standpoint, business strategy. I think she's the leader of American Rum, and in this role where we think reinventing like the foundation of American rum in many ways. Like I think she was the best possible leader for this. So we're super pumped that she saw that vision and agreed to this. But I also think it really, frankly, for our investors and for the ability for us to be successful here, it substantially mitigates our risk and validates our business model and opportunity for someone of Maggie's quality to join this effort, right? This is not her first rodeo, and I think she's the perfect person to kind of help us reinvent this.
I just wanted to add also, like Maggie, you were talking earlier about when I connected you and Darin, which was years ago, and those initial conversations, it was not at all like, hey, Darin, this is someone you should look into hiring.
No.
You were very focused at Mount Gay and like all in there, and that wasn't even on my radar. It was more just like Maggie is so knowledgeable about doing what you're trying to do, and I think she would be very interested in this idea. Let
Yeah.
me see if she has half an hour for you, that kind of thing. And so it was really like I don't remember exactly when it was that like the idea of Maggie actually coming and being a part of American Cane kind of came to full fruition. But like when I
Recently.
yeah, it wasn't that long
It was
ago.
like a bolt of lightning. It was like, boom.
I,
Oh, we never discussed this before. Okay.
Yeah, and so it was just from my perspective in trying to Darin, steer you in the right direction along the way as best as I could. When that became a possibility, I was like, I mean, I've always, believed in this idea and believed in your passion and everything, Darin. But like once I saw that that was a possibility, I was like, oh man, this could like really be something. Because just as a rum enthusiast, I've appreciated Maggie's work as a distiller over the years, but also through the work on the podcast, through conversations offline, like we've seen that side that I maybe others don't always see of sorry Maggie, I don't mean to like just make this Maggie praise hour right in front of her face, but like
It's
you
fine.
your
You're very sweet,
acumen
thank you.
across various areas of the industry, like you always have such interesting insights into not only the production side but the business side, and like being realistic about what you want to build. And like I've been able to see the evolution of Darin, what you wanted to come to market with over the years. And I mean, the initial ideas were distilling day one, going right to the source, fresh cane, like very grandiose kind of plans that take a lot of capital and investment. And so one of the things I wanted to ask, put this to both of you, along the way, you kind of have to make decisions and pivots. You have to kind of revise your go-to-market idea. It's always a compromise between the vision and what you can realistically achieve on day one, right? So I'd love to just kind of hear, when you look at the past 2.5 years, starting out with the distiller, with the idea of like, I want to launch a distillery, day one, go in, to getting to where you are now. What were some of like the major decisions you had to make along the way, and how do you do that like with the future in mind, and not wanting to kind of compromise on the long-term vision for the company?
Yeah. So the long-term vision for the company, when you really get down to, raising money, which is what this kind of turns on, right? Can you put together the funds to be able to do this? You've just got to be really conservative and mitigate your risk as much as possible. And so there's like a creative pressure to do one thing, and a financial, execution pressure to make sure you do that in the smartest way possible, right? And Maggie's helped, as she's come on board, get rid of my hard-headed ideas about uh, how I wanted to do this initially. And by the way, I mean, lots of people, one of the folks we connected with early on was Chris Montana from Denord Spirits.
Yeah.
Love Chris.
Chris is an amazingly smart guy and has done amazing things in the spirits business. Chris said to me early on, it's going to be hard to like go straight for giant distillery in Louisiana, and he's got his own experiences with Denord, um, and and so I think it's been a process of understanding how can we build something that has the ability to succeed in the long term, and that just comes down to kind of taking the right steps at the right times, mitigating risk at each step, understanding exactly who your consumer is, what the market opportunities are, and then kind of putting a plan in place to tackle those things in a thoughtful way. And that's what we've been able to build over the last year, as we changed our kind of go to market understanding, and then the last few months as Maggie's come on board. So we're both very clear, Maggie and I, that and Chaz, that we want to be makers and that we want to be distillers. And I think the core of the market opportunity is to have a large capacity distillery in Louisiana, and to tackle within the context of building America's premier rum house, a lot of the challenges that American rum has, right? Mm. There's amazing people out there producing great rums, but they're all battling, and we will all battle the challenges of like having access to great raw materials, the consumer sentiment that people, we're battling this education that we have to educate the consumer on high-end rums, on really the variety and amazing quality of cane juice rum. There's all of these opportunities that are also hurdles, right?
Yeah, and I think, for us, we want to be, you know, a destination just like any major bourbon house is. We want to be just
Mhm.
as strong and just as viable. And, to your previous question, the role as CEO is to really help with this strategic vision, giving direction and focus and strategy to get there. And like Darin said, staying absolutely dedicated to the principles that will make us stand out. Delicious rum, right? While also finding the most creative way and the most intelligent way to build it into a really strong business. And sometimes those are actually the things that push each one forward. Sometimes those business constraints give you the opportunity to make these bold choices that actually lead you in the right way to the right place, and it's definitely not my first time at a startup distillery having to do this, and it can lead you to some really beautiful places because if you just try to imitate someone else, if you just try to, I want to have it tomorrow, let's just crank and build, instead of doing it sustainably and all these things, it's not the same opportunity as it would be if you really had to find your way. And I think that pressure on us to find our way intelligently and, treating our investors with, a ton of respect for what they're putting in, not being careless with it, really making it go the furthest as we continue to fundraise is just going to be really key by having good ideas that we execute well. And I'm fortunate, as you said, 6 months is fast to bring a product to launch, but we're really fortunate that, we have all these extended networks that we know. We have teams that we know really well. We can partner with great people. And they've been so supportive of us and our timelines. It's really been unbelievable to see working in the rum world in a new way. I've never gotten the opportunity to work in the rum world like this. And to really work across companies to make something happen has been really exciting for me. In my work experience, I think one of the what is Will brought me to Darin, and I think Darin probably looked at like my LinkedIn or my Facebook, which I think most people don't, and he saw I've worked in import, I've worked in export, I've worked in distribution. I've worked a lot of stuff for legal, trying to like do route to market and a lot of business stuff in legal departments. So, I think he was a little bit more aware of some of my other experience. I'm really proud to be a strong producer, a strong distiller, a strong blender, a strong product creator. Product development's one of my biggest passions. But also then when he knew me most recently, he knew I was on the leadership team at Mount Gay, doing company strategy and vision with an amazing group of people, and seeing the rum industry from a completely different side. That was, it was really amazing to get to live and be in the Caribbean and experience that. I think that's something, in continental North America, we can feel really far away from,
Mhm.
even our American islands as well as other Caribbean producers. So I feel really lucky that I got to be there in the thick of it with great people and just growing my relationship to rum and bringing that back with me helps me see, what is really actually American.
Mm.
And how far do we have to go for the reputation of continental North American rum? What are people thinking? Do they even think about us? And what, a challenge we have, but the opportunity we have to really say, your rum collection's not complete without this.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I think it's a good thing. So I'm hoping that we can really, like I said, bring that strategy forward to build this company smartly over time, to continue to add to it, to make it more immersive, to welcome our customers into our world and have something that people are excited about. It gives them joy, to crack open a bottle.
I think we
That's a
also have a responsibility to, consumers and to our investors. Um, when you look at the rums, amazing rums from around the world, a lot of it is about place, right? It's about where those rums come from, how they're produced there, um, uh, and they have identities and they have really clear understandings of like those foundational elements of what make the rum from that place. And,
Mhm.
and we could have that here as well. Um, but a lot of the rum that we make here and the history of rum making here hasn't been as tied to place, right? It's we get molasses from and we're making rum, but it's so there's this opportunity, and we think the right place to do this is in Louisiana to create America's Rum House and have that be tied to place in the same way that it's tied to place in the Caribbean and some of these amazing other producers, right? Where you understand the terroir of Louisiana, you're working with the best raw materials that are local farmers. You're starting to kind of define what American rum is, at
Yeah.
least the articulation of it that's coming out of Louisiana, which to me and to us, I think, is the heart of where American cane is. And so it's like the place that makes sense to be the heart of American rum and the place where we produce it, right? And we don't really have, we've got some great producers there, but there's still an opportunity, we think, to kind of go in there with a high capacity distillery, doing all of the things right that we just talked about, and bringing under a strong brand that's a modern brand. So that's the big opportunity here.
Yeah. And bringing attention and lift to all the local distilleries that are here.
Yeah.
When you have a great bourbon house, it helps other bourbon houses and it helps small producers. So, for me, I love my peers. I'm always about the community. Someone who buys our bottle is absolutely going to go out and buy an Oxbow bottle, I hope. They're going to go buy a Rouleaison bottle, I hope, for their own benefit. It's a joy to drink. So, I'm hoping that we can really have that here. And to Darin's point, as we move forward and build the distillery and start working with farmers, and I'm lucky to have had that experience in Barbados from the ground up. It'll be a really great thing for us to share that joy. And just like in the Caribbean, there's a real passion around sugarcane here. It really,
Yeah.
yes, it has a history, and it's got a lot of things we need to be very honest about in the past. And it's also incredible contributions of black technology. I believe one of the first guys to really forward crystallizing sugar here in Louisiana was Haitian.
Wow.
And it's this skill and it's this talent and it's this wisdom and it's this technology from, black and brown folks, indigenous folks, all the folks who lived here, Creole folks, coming together, the Acadian community, et cetera, to build something. It's an amazing spirit in that way that everyone came together. And it's great to explore different regions and different areas, but we as a diverse group of Americans, we can have our own rum too.
Yeah.
And Louisiana community, rum producing community has been so supportive of what we've been trying to do over
Yeah.
the years. I mean, folks at Oxbow and Porch Jam and Rouleaison and just have been really, it's just a community that like no other I've been a part of.
Yeah, I was just back in Barbados this week, grabbing drinks with Trudy. She was asking how it was going. What are we up to? She loved meeting Darin. She met him a few months ago in the
Nice.
Caribbean and got to see Jackie, old Rumcast
Yeah,
alum.
that's right.
She's the head of the Barbados Sugarcane Research Station now, so
Wow.
she's running some projects there, which is amazing. I guess she's not like the head, but she's running the show. She's
Yeah.
amazing, and I also got to see Lorenzo, who's my sugar factory family. So they were all really excited about what we're doing. And, exactly, American rum isn't necessarily on the radar everywhere, but
Right.
it's coming.
Yeah, and I think one of the points to distill out of all of that really interesting talk just now was that you have this kind of exterior perspective and an interior perspective for American rum, which is a really nice balance of something to have to really understand, as you were kind of saying, both of you, how to go about this for the future and having that kind of viewpoint from both perspectives. So that's really interesting. I do want to ask one thing, which is that you said on the copy for American Cane right now, it makes the claim emphatically. It says it's going to be unmistakably American. And I know that Will and I have often discussed how American rum can be difficult to categorize, since a Louisiana rum can be markedly different stylistically to a New England rum or a Georgia rum or a Colorado. How do you square being unmistakably American with the notion that America is a pretty big country and a pretty big place and a lot of diversity, as you mentioned, with this smaller category of rum making and how you're approaching it?
Yeah. Do you mind if I kick off, Darin? I'm very passionate about
Go for
this.
it. Go for it.
So I mean, for me, I study wine a lot as well, right? And my husband's one of those big coffee dorks. So, each country of any size still has diversity within a sense of place. And of course, these are further expressed regionally. but just like wine or coffee. So if you take Australia and you superimpose it over the US, you're
I
shocked at
know.
how big Australia is,
Yes,
right?
I actually did that, you're 100% right.
And
Yes,
I'm
it is
telling
crazy how big it
you,
is.
it's huge. And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, and they're really divided, right? Like
Yes.
there's not a lot tons going on in the middle. So
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty
Mm-hmm.
isolated.
Yeah.
And for me, if I am blind tasting, I am telling you I will get that Australian wine every time.
Mm.
It doesn't matter if it's Victoria all the way over the other side. There's something Australian about it. And I
Hmm.
think for the US, it's all about the level of focus. And people who would have attended the Barbados rum experience and done my terroir and molasses tasting might remember that, we talk about the level of focus. And then there could be like, it can be, let's do France. There's French wine. And then there's Burgundy wine, which is like
Right.
Pinot Noir and Chardonnay typically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then it's Côte de Nuit. Okay, and then it's this one village. So
Mm.
like the level of focus changes, and with each level of focus, it adds to the terroir. So even though Barbados imports most of its molasses for a lot of its rum, it still tastes Bajan, right? Like I don't know about you, I could taste it blind and know that it's Barbados because there's skill, there's know-how, there's the blending tradition of pot and column, there's the climate and the terroir of the aging cellar. And then there's this really hard limestone water they use in fermentation, which creates certain esters, which even though a consumer might not say, oh, I'm getting this really intense grapefruit ester, oh, that's Barbadian, there's something about it that just feels to them. They might not be able to say, this is it, this is that. So for me, when it comes to American rum, a lot of American rums are very high in flavor definition. It has these crisp, distinct flavors instead of this, mixture and melange.
Mm.
It has a very linear structure on the palate. It's not so fat and wide. It's really got like a good straight down the palate vibe. It has a brightness of fruit from these fermentation esters, often much more orchard fruit than maybe tropical fruit. And
Mm.
a lot of that has to do with the temperature at fermentation. And that can manifest itself by if it's colder, you're going to get more dissolved gases like CO2 into the fermentation, which is going to cause a different type of fermentation ester to express itself, one mainly of sort of these orchard fruits. Whereas if it's warmer, there's less dissolved gas, and that really changes also the pH of fermentation because you're not getting CO2 redissolving. Sorry, I'm getting off topic. I
Wow.
can hear it. I
Yes.
can hear it. It's changing the pH. The
Go,
pH
Maggie, go.
so all of these conditions, just the temperature of the air changes the way gas dissolves into a fermentation, changes the esters you'll get. And because here in Louisiana we're subtropical, but inland you get a continental climate, which is different than being geographically continental.
Gotcha.
You've got a
Mm-hmm.
high diurnal shift, cold nights, warm days,
Mm-hmm.
hot summers, cold winters, and then we have these coastal maritime environments, and then a couple pockets of like a Mediterranean climate. But these are all still much cooler than the average day, in the Mediterranean, in the Caribbean. In the Caribbean, it's, 85 Fahrenheit, 87 Fahrenheit, every day, all day,
All the
December
time.
or July. I think people think it gets really hot in the summer. I mean, it's hot, but it's just 87. Whereas in
Yep.
Massachusetts, it was hotter.
Yep.
So, but these cooler fermentation temperatures in general, as a generalization, can really affect this. The cooler barrel aging, the diurnal shift, daytime, nighttime
Mm-hmm.
temperature
Mm-hmm.
is really different. In the Caribbean, not so much. Seasonal shifts, it creates a different flavor just across the country generally. Then, of course, there's certain suppliers, certain affinity for equipment, stainless steel fermentation, et cetera, that create these elements that even though a few of these elements might vary across distilleries, there's still an essence of American rum that's like emerging. Our rums are typically dry, unless they're a rum liqueur, similar to Barbados or Jamaica, which I think is great. And often the way oak integrates through aging due to some of our climatic differences, it shows a little bit more mid palate and throughout the core. It's less underlying. It's a little bit more through the core, like right there with sort of the base material flavors, which I really like. And we also get a lot of wet barrel sourcing. So when
Mm-hmm.
I buy a used bourbon barrel and I'm receiving it in the continental North America, I open it. It's oftentimes still wet inside,
Mm-hmm.
which is really
Mm.
going to change the grain and the immersion and that initial hit. Because the cellulose is hydrated, it's not going to
Mm-hmm.
uptake as much.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a little less aggressive. It's actually going to have sort of that when you taste a wine and you taste that it's barrel fermented versus not, it's kind of that same flavor in that the oak integrates a little more supplely when it's a wet barrel. And that's not always a guarantee. if you're having to order a lot in one container to come down and it's hot and it might dry out, it's just different. It's not that one's better or worse, it's that it's different. So it's a, sorry, bit of a long-winded response to how I find American rums and terroir. If I'm tasting and looking on the palate, I'm looking for linear structure, dry, high flavor definition, a little more orchard fruit esterification, and the oak to show a little bit differently on the palate. And I think they're across the American rums I've tried. And we're still new. We're still real new. So we're old but new again. And this modern era, we've got time to really see what happens. Burgundy wasn't Burgundy in a day.
Yeah.
So to me, that I mean, it's amazing, right? And you see the breadth of knowledge that
Yeah. Yeah.
we have around this, right? But to me, that kind of falls into this broader bucket of like actually establishing the foundation of what American rum is, right? Like there's all that stuff that's manipulating the, I don't know, terroir of what American rum is. And there's definitely different, levels that you can go down and end up maybe in Louisiana and the Louisiana rum. But we're thinking about it and we're talking about it and we have the skill set to analyze it, right? And
Yes.
we have a foundation that doesn't exist right now for American rum that people can then say, okay, I understand what this is and I understand what the variations of it are. And here are the geographies for American rum, right? There's New England and there's Louisiana, and we do stuff in the US Caribbean and
Maryland, Virginia, yeah,
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Virginia. We have molasses rums and we do cane juice rums in these areas. And these are the types of rums that you can get. And here's like these amazing qualities. And here we've curated this like go-to beautiful, delicious rum that you can use every day. And then we've given you at the higher end, the American Cane brand and all of these rums that you can go to. And like this is creating the kind of foundation for American rum and America's Rum House. There are pieces of it out there, but I just don't, we don't see that being pulled together yet in the way that we hope to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
I think there's great people doing foundational work, and I think that we can absolutely, just like Darin said, work to really put it on the map in a meaningful way. Because scale is very hard because of the cost of labor, which we're happy to pay people what they deserve for their great work to make what we do possible. And it is also just different than a lot of other rum producing nations. The cost of labor is what we pay people is very, very different. And I'm happy about that. Like that's not a problem. It's just a reality. And it means scale is hard. It's
yeah.
really hard.
Well,
So
and
we're gonna find a way. We're gonna make it happen.
like we've seen in recent years, I mean, there's multiple examples of distilleries coming online that they don't have the problem of not having a lot of startup capital, right? Like they actually have large investment and they come on with really exciting concepts in interesting places. I mean, there was Tin Cane in Trinidad, which had a lot of financial backing. There's Renegade in Granada as
Mm-hmm.
well. And we've seen that
Huge
like
capital expenditure, yeah.
exactly
Mm-hmm.
like we talked to the people behind that and saw everything that went into it. And I mean, as a rum enthusiast, you saw like what both projects were doing and we're like, oh my god, this is amazing, right? And you still see how difficult it is, and that's when you come with a level of scale, right? I mean, those weren't necessarily the biggest distilleries in the world, but they also weren't, like a
Their
neighborhood
ambition.
craft. Yeah, they weren't
Yeah.
a neighborhood craft distillery either. And you see the challenges that happen with that. So I think that's, as I've been kind of observing this journey a little bit removed from where y'all are, and seeing the realities of if you want to build something that is sustainable and has a runway, right? It's really threading a needle.
Yeah. And this was one of the reasons I joined Darin is, I was really blessed to have people approach me with their big dreams, and that's great. But Darin was very willing to take feedback on, I know we're in love with this idea, but this is how it's going to be really hard
Mm.
and fraught. And I'm lucky to have, I've been doing this now like 18 years. My husband was like, "Do you realize you've been doing this 18 years now?" I'm like, "You're kidding me." Been doing this 18 years. So I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot come and go. I
Hmm.
remember Orinoco rum, if anyone remembers that one.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's like we've seen a lot come and go. And for me, we always had the near misses meetings. This is what I've always done. When something goes wrong for someone, our heart goes out to them. We feel for them. And we also want to look at why did it happen and how do we not do that?
Yeah.
So I've been doing this for 18 years. And so when I met Darin and he was willing to take advice, he understood what it meant. Like people often don't understand this industry and what it means to imagine opening a restaurant, buying your produce, hiring your team, buying the tables, setting the tablecloths, and then not and paying every night for that business to run and not opening your door to a single customer for 5 years. Like
Yeah.
people don't understand. And you hear their passion, you hear their excitement. They say they understand, but there's a tingle to like, this person knows. And when I met Darin, he knew this was going to be long term. The market's going to change. Every few years, it's going to be ups and downs. And how do we get through it? How do we make the right choices at the right time? And notice things before they're a problem and manage things really well because we want to get to that place where we have this incredible, cellar to walk into and this amazing distillery with an amazing staff and really lifting up these stories of the contributions to rum. And we want to make it real. It's not just we want to have it tomorrow. We want to make it real. So, working with fundraising and investing to phase things properly and slowly so that we aren't way over expanding and then retracting on ourselves.
The only other thing I'll say is to the answer to your question, kind of how is this American
Yeah.
part, is that the brand is about reconnecting Americans to its cultural kind of appreciation and history where rum was this core spirit, right? And that's part of this being American, right? Is that rum is American, we're a bit disconnected from that, and we're going to reconnect that in the consumer mind. And then we're doing that in like the physical ways that Maggie's talking about with respect to how the rum is executed. But it's this mentality, right, that brings rum to be more central to American culture.
Yeah, I totally get the perspective there and think it's absolutely the right way. And when you have that alignment, like you all seem to have in your espousing, that's a really special thing. I wanted to ask a little bit more about where you are in the journey of that process right now with the distillery, with the location. Have you decided things like, are you doing single estate cane juice, like any of those types of things that you can talk about at this point?
Well, so the two phases, I think, so we're talking more about
Yes, phase
the
two
still,
now.
yeah, that phase, we know where we want to be. We know that Louisiana is the location.
Okay.
Um, we know, and we've targeted Lafayette. The goal is, and before we made these changes in the last 6 months, like we were really going to execute a distillery in Lafayette, as part of the initial rollout there. So we know who we want to work with, the farmers that we're working with, the raw materials that we get. Like that part is actually pretty well understood. We've now just decided that the best way to kind of mitigate risk and to make this a success is to push that phase out a little bit, right? So we have a sense of what the challenges are that we're trying to avoid with the distillery in Louisiana in terms of making rum kind of the right way, the processes, the equipment, the design for our distillery. We've spent a lot of time on the revenue streams that come out of the distillery. We've been down all of that, those roads. And we so when the time is right, we'll execute that, and it's pretty well thought out already.
Yeah, and it gives us freedom to make a lot of really cool and different rums. I'm telling Darin has it all planned out. He already has an amazing sugar cane crushing mill ready to go. Like,
Cool.
yeah, yeah. I was like,
Okay.
dang, you guys are prepared. Yeah, we'll have the freedom to do some really cool stuff. And yeah, all the way from working with local farmers, partnering with some of the, black cane growers historically to this area. We've got cane fields all around us, and being able to partner and do cool things and try exciting rums. And you know me, I'm like, I get excited about something or I get an idea, and then we're like, let's do a special edition, and then let's have some, amazing, solid, standard offerings that are just, essential. I want to see it behind every bar. So, yeah, in the future with the distillery layout plan once the building begins to have a huge variety of where we want to go. It allows us to innovate, and that's really exciting because, like I said, we aren't tied to a big, already existing machine of this, so we can really explore and find our way and get to know ourselves and be ready to make anything as long as it's tasty.
One of the things that I wanted to explore a little bit here is I think people listening when they hear the idea of sourcing, I think the first place their minds probably went was, okay, American cane can source from American rum makers across the country, right? And y'all spoke a little bit to that probably being potentially in the cards in the future. And I think the decision to start sourcing globally makes a lot of sense. Not only in the quality of what's available, but the opportunity and what you can put out. But I know you've also explored what it would take to do an American made sourced rum, and I think that's really interesting because it's not like we don't really see products like that. And I'd love if y'all could speak to just sort of why you decided not to start with that, or maybe what are some of the challenges with that and what are some of the opportunities there.
Yeah, I think I'll start with the like why we started, and then Darren, I know you've got great passion and amazing things to share about, American rum. We both do, but you speak eloquently on it. So with the global rum, I think that it was just the chance to say, rum is actually like a global heritage drink. As we know, there's cane spirits all over Asia, originating from Asia.
Mm-hmm.
There's cane spirits all across the globe, all throughout Africa. I've met amazing distillers. We had a distiller from Kenya come and visit me previously, etc. And then, of course, rum, as we know, rum throughout the Caribbean. And then you also have cachaça and other sugar cane
Yeah.
spirits throughout Central America. So this is a global heritage drink. It unites us. We sit down at the table together and have it. But it is America's heritage drink.
Hmm.
And that is part of the global story. So I just thought this was a great opportunity to make it a little less niche and a little more welcoming. So this, as I said, it won't be under the American Cane brand.
Right.
It may just be labeled rum, simple rum. We're gonna see. We're starting that adventure like next week,
Uh-huh.
and so for us, it's that's step one, and then step two is yeah, American rum is broad. It's continental. It's also Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
And exploring, what can we play with there? Who can we partner with there to really say, this is this moment in America's rum history. It's a special moment.
Hmm.
And they write imbibe in 200 years. What are they going to say about this era? And I think I'll let Darren take over to say how he kind of wants to celebrate that by, celebrating and bringing forth in a new way some American rum blends.
Uh, Thanks, Maggie. I was just shocked in some ways, or maybe I wasn't, but it was notable to me that when I think I've got coming up on 400 bottles of rum in the basement, right?
Nice.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And some amazing American rum, amazing international rums, and lots of blends, right? And blending in rum is one of the basic skill sets and product strategies. And very few rums are blended with American rum.
Right.
Yep.
And there's almost no blends of just American rums. And now somebody's gonna, beat us to that, but but the idea, right, is that we believe in American rum. We're doubling down on American rum by actually looking at the world of producers that exist in America, curating a really amazing group of rums and then starting to play with them. And starting to also use American rum as a major blending component with some international rums. And so, part of being America's, hopefully new player in this space is for us to really explore and work with some amazing American rums that are out there. and do some blends that I think are just novel and cool, and that the rum community will really appreciate, and will help drive, like, the appreciation and adoption of American rum overall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Darin, I don't think you have to worry too much about someone beating you to that because, let me say, Will and I have done this recently. Like, blending is so freaking hard, right? And you have to know someone has to have really good experience and understanding. You can't just say, "Oh yeah, we're just going to throw this and this and it'll be great," right? So you have to curate it in the right way, and I think you've got a pretty good crew for that so far. So,
Nice.
that's an ace in the hole, if you will, for you there, and it sounds like an exciting venture.
Yeah, it is one of the nice things. Like as a new producer, there's so many risks to can you identify a flaw? Could you tell that it's flawed? Could you know how to fix that flaw? This is
Yeah.
often when, when I would get calls from new startup distilleries who are going through something tough, which is a natural part of the growing pains. If you're out there and you're going through that, don't feel bad. I was there once too.
Yeah.
We're lucky that our path has been made a lot easier by just being able to get through a lot of that stuff. We were tasting, I think, Will, were you? I think you were at this one. You had to have been. And I was like, I think this is going to be a mistake, but I'm going to try this with this. And I was like, yep, no, don't do that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Like
Yeah.
knowing it's a mistake before you do it is always wise. So
Yeah. Honestly, I at some point, we should probably do some kind of episode where it features Maggie, you leading us through a tasting or something.
Yeah.
Because doing tastings with Maggie makes me realize how little I actually know about tasting. And I don't mean that
Oh,
in a
yeah.
way where it's not
Been
just
there
like
also,
someone
Will. Yes.
it's not just like someone showing off their knowledge. It's like I think anyone who's a rum enthusiast has had a moment where they're tasting something and they don't know how to explain what's going on or why something tastes the way it does.
Yep.
And Maggie's able to give you those answers like almost every time. And you suddenly understand so much more about the way you're drinking and realize how many layers there are to this for you still to discover. It's a really cool
Yeah.
process.
thank you.
I just can't
People-
wait next time I'm tasting an American rum with someone to say, "Of course, don't you get the linear structure and structured pour? Come on,
The purity of the base material really shows, and it's from those
Yeah.
more moderated fermentation temperatures that don't blow out base material aroma. Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
It's really
I'm writing.
capacious.
I'm furiously
There you
taking
go.
notes right now, like that little cat meme. I'm taking the notes.
One thing I will say is I think I find this in myself. I think we all do. I think when we see something new launching, we all get a little impatient about like I want to taste the stuff that they're gonna make, right?
Yeah.
But
You're talking about the last few years of my life, man.
totally.
Every day, can I taste it?
Totally. I've talked to lots of startup distilleries over the years, and many of them source products, and I've kind of come around over the years to like, okay, I do think there are interesting, cool ways people can do this, and at the end of the day, it's even if it's being sourced from somewhere else, interesting rum is being brought into the American market, right? Which is
Yeah.
something I think rum enthusiasts can get excited about. But what I wanted to mention is I think also we've all seen the new brands enter the market who enter from the perspective of we are coming to make rum the right way, or like it
Yes.
needs to be fixed in some way. And
I
so
am the savior of rum.
yeah, so I think it's exciting to hear another company coming in with the perspective of like, yeah, we want to do something new, but also there's a lot here to be celebrated and a lot here that is misunderstood or not really known, and we want to help highlight that and kind of show you what rum's all about. So I think any time I've seen new brands coming and choosing that path, I'm always a lot more excited.
Well, thanks. It's one of the things I liked most about Darin was he came with a huge respect for rum, not a we need to make it taste just like a whiskey. We need to, da
Yeah.
da da da. He loved rum first, and that was really exciting for me. It's not something you see all the time in new startups. And yeah, we're another voice in the chorus. It's another way to be. When I lived in Barbados, there's a certain rum, you see it everywhere, when the day is done. That's what a lot of people grab for. It's kind of, seen around a lot. There's a lot of love brands. There's a lot of amazing rums being drank across Barbados. But there are certain ones that like, family table. And for me, I think that it's great that there's, amazing different communities living all across America and they, connect with their heritage that way. And I'd also love there to be something for as people living in this land to, no matter where you are from the world, no matter what the background is, we're all, kind of united by like this is a drink and it belongs to us. And I think that's something that was really important about living in the Caribbean. Yes, rum has a dark past, but that drink belongs, that's ours and it's our skill, and it's our knowledge and it's our history. And we brought this forth and it means a lot to us. And, it needs to be protected and it can't be lost. And I think that that's something that, there's no reason why we shouldn't also have that. When we did Resistance Served a few years ago, an amazing Ashton Berry runs this incredible event, and I was lucky enough to attend. And there were a couple rum speakers and a couple cane speakers talking about the contributions of Black and Brown folks to hospitality. About halfway through the week, she's like, "I feel like we're talking about rum a lot, and people are asking me like about rum. There's not a lot of connection or knowledge about rum here. We need to do a big rum tasting." And she put together this incredible tasting event for all the guests, like with people to try all these different rums to like reconnect with like, it's part of culture. And that was here in New Orleans. And it was amazing to see so many young people who were like, yeah, I just don't even really think about drinking that to, yeah, this is ours. It was cool.
All right, so I'm going to absolve you of responsibility before I ask this question, right? You don't have to hold to any of this or anything like that, but I do wanted to ask a little bit. You've given us a little information. We know, roughly 6 months to expect something out somehow. We don't know what it is yet exactly in terms of the branding or anything, and that's fine. We also know you have a spot picked out in Louisiana, but that's just now getting off the ground. So I have to ask, if all goes according to plan, what do the next 5 years look like for American Cane? Can you give us any timelines, milestones? This might help you, Maggie, so that people don't ask you, you know? So what does that look like?
Yeah, I can start with this year, Darin, and then you want to take us forward to the big vision. Yeah, so this year, practical on the ground. This summer, hopefully you're enjoying a taste with us of our first releases, our first sort of entree into meeting our customers and exploring the rum world from this new adventure. And then hopefully by winter, something that says American Cane on the bottle. So
Nice.
yeah, speedy over here.
That's even faster than I thought.
Yeah.
Even I'm surprised.
I've been amazed, like the speed at which things have come together. I'm just gonna knock on wood right now. Has been like is a different pace of life for me now. I love this. It's like, yeah, we're making a lot of progress. We're getting far fast. We're lucky for the partners we have and all the support we have to help us make things happen. It's been amazing.
Nice.
And then I think, that's basically kind of first and second phase is those two launches. And then third phase is this distillery launch. And I think the timing for that just really depends on how well we execute those first two phases and what we learn from the market and the consumer and the growth of the industry and then a lot of it's fundraising as well. And if all that comes together, like, we would then kick off building out a distillery. And that could happen as quickly as, a couple years, 24 months ish. And
Opening the doors, yeah.
yeah. So that's the thinking. That's super exciting for us to get to that phase three. And I think we've got a really smart plan for the first two phases that get us there and get us there with like a bunch of feedback about our initial products from the marketplace, from the consumer. Like we can iterate on that, like, and then, really launch into the distillery, having a real sense of the direction and the strategy that we need to execute with that.
Yeah. The last thing you want to do is, build some huge permanent piece of something with a
Right.
great idea that
Mhm.
then, you need to make sure like it serves a purpose. Who's excited about it? What do we really want to do? A lot of consulting I did was distilleries that were built and they said, well, actually, now that we're open, we've decided to change all these things. We need to change half our equipment. We want to build the
Yeah.
right way and really strategically. And, also part of it is bringing on investment. We would really love to accelerate, but we don't want to overtax ourselves too quickly. We want to make sure we do right by growing in the right way. And the more investment we could take on, the further we could push faster.
Yeah. And we are actively right now looking, for additional investors. So if folks, one of the things that's a core goal of ours is accessibility of the rums that we create, and both, from a price point, from geographical distribution standpoint. Taking that same thinking, we want to make the opportunity to kind of be an owner in American Cane as well, accessible to folks. So if folks are interested, you can reach out to us.
Awesome. Well, I don't want to put any pressure here, but Will, one of my predictions was that American Rum was going to take a big step forward in the next
That's true.
12 months. It sounds like, I'm just saying, it sounds like that might be possible. At least the first few, kind of things happening. And then further from there, there's all bets are off, right? It's a lot of interesting and fun things that sound like they're coming together. So very excited. Count me among the people very excited for all of this.
John's just hoping to get a win on that prediction.
Yes,
now.
I
It's
am.
entirely motivated by that.
Hopefully we can help you out, John.
Yeah. Here for it.
Well, I think we've covered a lot. People know kind of the backstory, the way forward. Is there anything we didn't speak to or didn't get to that you wanna leave with people before we wrap up?
I think, well, Darin, do you have any final thoughts?
Go for it. No.
I was going to say, John, would you close us out with a song?
Oh, nice. Nice.
He will do it if you ask him.
If you
I
don't
listened-
mind, and if you have the energy and the space, feel free to say no.
Wow.
I listened back to our episode recently where at the end of it, Will included that song when we were at Liverpool, and I was horrified because I was, kind of, I don't want to say drunk, but like I was very tipsy at that point. Like we had tried 25 different rums at the warehouse, and I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe I did that. Because it was awful. But yeah, sometimes I can sing, and it sometimes sounds
You
good.
sing beautifully. I
Your
enjoy
your
it.
your awful is the average person's excellent when it comes to
Yeah.
singing. So
Yeah, you made Jackie and I's day last time, so.
Aw, that's so great. That's awesome to hear. I don't know what would I even sing? I have no idea.
How about It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday?
Oh my goodness! All right, I'll give you a little.
I know
bit
that's a lot of pressure. If that's too much, we could go chill.
Okay, I think I can do a little. All right, here we go. How do I say goodbye to what we've had? The good times that made us laugh, I'll wave them back. It's hard to sing and sit. I thought we'd get to see forever, but forever's gone away.
Woo!
'Cause it's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday.
all right.
Damn.
That's the new outro to every episode now.
Awesome.
Don't you dare. And we'll get a copyright problem.
That is awesome.
Oh, that was
Thank you for
lovely. Lovely. Thank you,
Haven't
darling.
sang that in a long time. That was
Completely unplanned. You see how ready to rise to the occasion he
I
is
am
at all times.
blown away.
not a lot of people know, but there was definitely a background there of an a cappella group with my three best friends from high school, two of which Jamaican, one of which Haitian, and myself here in Miami. We're a very diverse place, and it was always a great time. So I appreciate you giving me that opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, you made my day. I love it. A little bit of sweetness.
If anybody runs into John at like a rum event or anything, that's the new thing is just, challenge him to sing a song and see if he can pull it off right then and there.
I love that
Dan-
you knew every word, man. That was awesome.
That was great.
Oh man, did not see that one. I did not see that coming.
Not what you thought you'd be doing at the crack of dawn on a Saturday morning.
That's
Well,
right.
if you're not gonna do the rapid fire, then the tables have
Oh,
to be
that's
turned on
true.
you, and you have to
a
be the
good
one who's
point.
put on the spot.
That's a good point. All right, fair. From now on, rapid fire every time. I'm coming with it.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Rumcast. We would love to hear your thoughts, questions, comments on all things American Cane, all things the Rumcast. If you have ideas about the idea that John threw out in the intro, our little rum temperature tests, please send us an email, host@rumcast.com. That's HOST@rumcast.com. Or you can send us a message on social media. John, where can they find us?
At the Rumcast, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. DM us there. Let us know what's going on with you. If you're, we want to, take your temperature on this idea. Oh, that was awful.
Oh, man.
I'm sticking with it though. We're gonna go with it. Let us know what rums you want us to try out with the temperature that you can do it along with us. We want to take you along for the ride. So yeah, let us know. Hit us up.
We're going to get to the bottom of this. And also, much more to come. I know in our last episode, we took you inside Made Rum Company. We showed you some of the rums that we tried. I think we said in the episode, we have made a decision on the rum that we will be bottling. And that will be revealed in due course, as they say. So watch for future episodes. There's much more. John and I are also just beginning the label design stage, so sparks are sure to fly. We'll probably try to capture and share some of that as well. So really looking forward to taking you down that road with us. But John, until next time,
Cheers.
Cheers.
Take me on a trip, I'd like to go someday. Take me to the Gulf, I'd like to see LA. I really want to come make rum with you. You'll be my American cane. American cane.
There it is.
Bam. That just came straight off the dome. I can't say a Miami Rum Congress exactly right, but I can, sing it.
Yeah. We'll have to forward that jingle to them.
They'll love that.
I was hovering on the stop recording button, but I didn't, so